Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. This is God's word for us.
Good morning. Thank you, Judy. And thanks, Don and Eric. It's great to start a worship service with the songs. And I want to thank ahead of time Jason. I'm not a tech guy, so any slides you see up here all came from Jason and pictures and such too, so much appreciated. I'm honored to fill in for Pastor Dave this morning to give you a message that God's put on my heart. Is this outside my comfort zone? You bet it is. But part of my message is trusting God, and if you're doing God's will, he'll be there alongside you to walk through it. So I'm doing that. So yeah, different times in my life, I thought I had things figured out, and God certainly had a different path for me to go on. I've been a follower of Christ for over 50 years, and you would think during that long time I would have figured out God's path for me a long time ago. And I wish I could say it's been a smooth ride and a time of growth and learning. But there's some basic truths and questions that I needed to answer along the way. Yeah, let's see. There we go. The first was just the realization that God has a plan specifically for me, and that it's not to make my life easier, but it's to help me grow so he can use me to help his kingdom grow. And then also, there we go. And then I need to ask myself, am I following his plan or am I following my own plan? And lastly, how do we discover what God's plan is for us? Oops, jumped in. For some of us like myself, it can take 50 years to answer some of these questions. And God's always amazed me with the patience that he's had for me. Never giving up, even though I can be a slow learner, especially when it comes to kingdom matters. And a couple years ago, I shared at Devotion at Family Camp a couple verses that have meant a lot to me, and I'd like to expand on that today. So one of them was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on in all your ways, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And there was two key words in that for me, was to trust and all. That was important to me, in all your ways. And then the second verse was Psalm 119, 105. This is an old Pioneer Club verse. We used to sing this at the start of every meeting, so it's just kind of ingrained in my mind. But your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. And both of these verses refer to your path. One is straightening out your path to make it easier to go down. And this one is lighting the way for us so we can see what our path is that God has us on. And that goes back to my question about following his path, or am I dragging him along my path? I would like to share several times in my life where God's made some pretty dramatic changes, corrections to the path that I was on. But before I get into that, there's two things I just wanted to mention. Is first of all, these were instances in my life. So I'm not up here to share what's been going on in my life, but I want these to be examples. I'm sure that most, if not all of you, have had similar instances in your life that has really had a major impact on who you are today, and especially in your walk with God. And then the second part is I'm going to be interchanging a lot. I'll be talking about me and I, but it very much is we and us. Gail and I have been walking this journey together for these 50 years. So things that affected my life very much affected her life as well. And we did discuss these. I got a chance to ask her what she was feeling during these times to get a little better idea. So, yeah, I just want a little side note. Without her walking by my side all through these years, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I really praise God for bringing her into my life. Now, the Bible has many examples of people that God spoke to or influenced in choosing a path in their life. So I just wanted to bring up 3 examples. And the first is Abraham, and he's kind of a hero of mine. He wasn't perfect by any means. We all know he made mistakes. He was human, just like the rest of us. But it amazes me his reaction when God presented his plan for Abraham. And we read in Genesis 12, verses 1 through 3, "Now the Lord said to Abram, 'Go from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, and I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed.'" I want to go back and take a look at verse 3 again and just see what God's actually asking him. He says, the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, from your relatives, from your father's house." So he's asking Abraham to drop everything you're familiar with, everything you're comfortable with, and I've got a plan for you. He does disclose the plan to Abraham, but still, he's telling him, just drop everything and go. And what amazes me is Abraham's response, which we see at the start of verse 4. "So Abram went away as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him." I mean, it wasn't even a complete sentence. Abraham dropped everything and said, "Yes, Lord, whatever you want me to do, I'll do." And boy, I wish I had that kind of heart and could do that. And I was thinking about it. What would my reaction be if God said something like that to me? And I would say, "God, can we sit down and have a cup of coffee over this and maybe discuss this a little bit?" That's not Abraham's response. He just said, "Yes, sir, let's do it." So another situation comes up a few chapters later in chapter 13. Abraham and Lot, they've become so prosperous in the new land of Canaan that God has led them to that they need to split up now. So Abraham, being a godly man, he lets Lot choose which land he wants to. And at this point, if I was Lot, hopefully, I would take a look at the whole land, decide, well, where's the watering holes? Where's the best place to grow crops? Where's the best place for our herds to get water and feed? And then I'd talk it over with Abraham, and we would split it up to make sure we both got some and we could both continue to prosper. Well, is this what Lot did? Lot raised his eyes and saw the vicinity of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, and like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt going towards Zoar. So he saw this beautiful land, And Lot chose for himself all the vicinity of the Jordan, the valley of the Jordan that he was looking at. Lot's response is very different. Let's take a look at what Lot didn't do. He didn't consult with Abraham. At least there's no indication in the Bible that he consulted with Abraham and talked it over. And more importantly, there's no indication that he ever talked to God about this and asked God, well, where do you want me to go? Where do you think I should choose? So his response was very self-centered. And we all know how things went for Lot after this time. So there's a verse in Philippians 2, 3, and 4. Do nothing from your selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility consider one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interest, but also for the interest of others. And then the third figure is Jonah. And we see in verses right at the start, in chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry out against it, because their wickedness has come before me. And what's Jonah's response at the start of verse 3? But Jonah got up to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He actually was telling the Lord, no, I don't want to do this. And I don't know, he might have even had in his heart thinking, God, I think you're making a mistake. I'm going to help you here. And we're not going to help these people in Nineveh. Their wickedness, they don't deserve to be saved. And we see in verse 10, even the sailors recognized what he was doing. Then the men came extremely afraid, and they said to him, How could you do this to us? For the men knew that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord. So God has a plan for each of these folks. And we see three very different responses to God. Abraham says, Yes, Lord, whatever you want, I'll do it. Lot, very self-serving. He's going to take a look at things and decide what path is best for him. And then Jonah, he doesn't agree with the Lord's plan, and he runs away, and we all know how that came out for him. So if I was Lot or Jonah, I'd take a look at Proverbs 14:12. There is a way which seems right to a person, but its end is the way of death. And if that doesn't encourage you to seek God's will, I'm not sure what will. So I'd like to take a moment to reflect on 2 times in my life that had major impact in both Gil and my life, and more importantly, our walk with God. We were comfortably going in one direction, and then bam, it just seemed like our life flipped upside down. In looking back at these times, it's hard for me to believe that God did not have a hand in this, at least in making something good out of very challenging times. And how we responded clearly had an impact on our future walk with Him. So, okay, thought I was out of order. So I'd like to take you back to 1983, which may be before some of you were around, or some of you may not have many memories from that time, but I really thought my life was going great, and my plans were going right as I had planned, falling right into place. And surely God must be blessing us if that was the case. But there's 2 key words in that sentence: it was my plans. And I mentioned that earlier devotion that I did at family camp, that I considered myself a back pocket Christian. I had only been a follower of Christ for 7 years. I didn't really understand Jesus' role. I thought this is really cool that I have Jesus walking along with me, and he's right here in my back pocket, so if I ever have trouble, I can just pull him out, and he's right there to help me. So at the start of the year in 1983, we were in good health. We had a baby on the way. We had just moved back to the west side. We had been on the east of the mountains for over 5 years, so we quit our jobs and moved back to the west to be by family and friends and much better climate over here. We had found a good church family over here, and my career seemed to be going. Oh. Okay, yep. So my career seemed to be going right on schedule with my plan. At the end of January, our world took a turn for the worst. My manager sat me down and said, we're going to have to lay you off. Their excuse was the economy was turning down. We didn't really have any more future plans for expansion at this point. So months later down the road, Gail was talking to a former coworker of mine and found out that I'd actually been fired, that somebody had been skimming off the deposits, and I was one of 3 people that did the daily deposits. And even though I had been there 2.5 years, I was still the young guy, the new guy. The other 2 were ladies that had been there a long time. So I could see it was natural to think that maybe it was me, although I don't think they handled it well. But by the time we found out, there really was nothing we could do about it. I tend to be an optimistic person, so I was thinking getting laid off, okay, it's not that big a deal. I started sending out resumes. I was working at a Hallmark shop, so sending out resumes to all the Hallmark shops along the I-5 corridor, and after a couple months, wasn't getting any response, so I started sending them out to other retail stores. One thing I didn't mention, part of my big plan was the reason I was in retail, getting training and learning the ropes, is by the time I was 40, I wanted to own my own store. And not surprisingly to a lot of you, it would have been a sporting goods store, was my dream. So I started applying to other retail stores, even went over to Cle Elum and interviewed at a sporting goods store over there. But again, we're 4 months into this and still not getting much leads at all. So I started branching out, started looking for bookkeeping jobs to go along with my previous accounting experience. And my brother worked for Farmers Insurance as an underwriter and really enjoyed it. So okay, I'll try insurance too, since nothing else was coming up. So several more months went by. We're now 5 months out, and I'm still without a job. Gail is getting closer to delivery time. And one thing I didn't mention, this was actually our second baby. We lost a baby boy that was stillborn with no advance notice. So the doctors were keeping a very close eye on Gail this time, but it did add a lot of extra anxiety for us. And we were very thankful for the prayer support we had from our church family, and our parents helped us pay for the expenses since we were unemployed. So on June 8th of that year, our beautiful daughter Cheryl was born. It's still 40 years later, still emotional. But the feelings we had when we heard her cry, I just can't describe it. Now, I already had an interview scheduled just a couple days, it turns out, after Cheryl was born. And it was with Safeco Title Insurance. I didn't have a clue what title insurance was, and I didn't care. I was dead tired. I was riding an emotional high. And the last thing I wanted to do was go to an interview, and I hadn't done, usually I'd do some research about the company to find out about it ahead of time. I hadn't done that at all. And I wanted to stay with Cheryl and Gail just to be there and support them. So the last thing I wanted to do was to go on, and I seriously considered canceling the interview, but I just we felt that God was leading me to go ahead and go to that. And I'm convinced that going to that interview with an I don't care attitude, I don't really want to be here, made me a lot bolder than I probably would have been, and probably really helped me get that job. And looking back, God couldn't have picked a better career for me. And then, because I enjoy logic problems and figuring things out, and that's a lot of what title insurance is you're gathering information, you're doing research, you're gathering information, seeing what you're missing, figuring out where to get that. So it's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. You got the pieces, are you missing any pieces? Once you got that, put it together, does it make sense? So that's a short lesson on title insurance. But to make the timing of this even more amazing is Safeco was doing an experiment. This is only the second time. They had done one in California, but they were going to hire 8 people from different backgrounds. And it essentially, we were going back to college for a 6-week intensive class to learn title insurance. And there was going to be a final exam, which you had to pass. 7 out of the 8 of us passed that exam and moved up to the main office. But back then, like probably a lot of businesses, title insurance was compartmentalized. So you would have maybe 5 different tasks, and you'd have 5 different people doing each task. But we were trained to do all 5. So like I say, it was an experiment. It was a way to see if they could make the process a little more consistent, a little more efficient. But what a great opportunity for us to receive this special training. And I really believe over the years of layoffs, real estate goes up and down, so they have their layoff periods. We went through 2 mergers. We went through the real estate crash in 2007. And we all survived through that, and I think it was because of that special training that we had gotten way back when. So then in 1986, God blessed us with our second daughter, Karen, another beautiful daughter. And I see, looking back at it, having a Monday through Friday job with some flexibility in my schedule really helped me to be able to participate in my family, my growing family. We actually helped form a group, Families with Preschoolers, and then it was Pioneer Club, and then it was youth group. Well, I got a chance to coach softball, Little League, and then youth group, and then going on mission trips, and all of that. To be honest, if I had been in retail, especially if I had owned my own store, I probably wouldn't have had those opportunities. So what God taught me during this time was to put more trust in Him and rely on Him during these difficult challenges, and to include Him in my plans. So I went from having Him as a back pocket Christian to being more in a partnership with Jesus. And, did God get me fired? Did he keep me unemployed, waiting for this specific time period? I don't know. But Romans 8:28 comes to mind. We know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Now, as a partnership, because I was giving Jesus my time and serving him on Sunday mornings, church meetings, church events, I thought that was good. That was Jesus' path. But I still had my worldly time. And that's why I say it was a partnership, where I could concentrate on my own activities. So it was kind of like going down two different paths. I had the path I was following Jesus, but a parallel path where I was doing my own thing too. And that's why we were in more of a partnership, is the way I looked at it. So then another correction came. This was around 2003, 2004. I had some health problems that just totally changed my life, changed our life. And it really, honestly, was the brought to my knees moment. And after many tests were done, the doctor sat me down, and first thing he says, well, the good news is this is not life-threatening, which is great, but I could sense a but there. And he looked at me and he says, this will be life-changing. And I wasn't sure what he meant by that. But part of it was losing some of my abilities that I took great pride in. Had to give up playing basketball, gave up running race events, wasn't able to play softball at the level that I was accustomed to. And another issue that I hadn't really experienced before was dealing with the fatigue, both physical and mental fatigue. And the easiest way to explain that is, like a lot of us, I'd go 10, 12 hours a day, do multitasking, and be able to do that without a problem. But now it was like I was running out of gas after 6 hours. And a real concern we had at that time, well, how is this going to affect my work, my career? How am I going to be able to keep doing what I was doing? And during that time, God really taught me to appreciate the things that I could do instead of getting upset about the abilities and things that I could no longer do. So we really prayed about the work situation, and we decided that it was probably best to be open and upfront about it. And so as hard as it was, I went to my boss and just explained the situation. And they were great. They helped me adjust my workload, my schedule, and we even started documenting my personnel file. So if I needed to go on disability down the road, that would be easier to do. So that really was the right direction to go, and I thank God for leading us that way. And I had a lot of questions about depression back then. Whenever I'd see a doctor or a nurse, they'd say, well, how's your depression level? Because that, I guess, it is a problem for a lot of people in that situation. And so my typical responses to people when they had asked me, I was getting asked so much about that I came up with a list kind of that I'd quote to them. So my reason for not having much of an issue with depression included just because I tended to be an optimistic person, an outlook on life. I have a loving wife to support me and help me through this time. I have the support of a church family and friends, and that is so important. And then lastly, I'd say, well, my faith as a follower of Christ was very important. And I'll admit back then I was a little leery about sharing that part of it. Is what I realized looking at it is truly that was number one. My faith, Gail and I, our walk is really what got us through that time. And so I've learned to be more bold about putting that first and being honest about the role that Jesus has in our life. So the lesson I learned from that experience is I'm not in an equal partnership with Jesus. It's not these two parallel paths, and I do my thing, you do your thing. But that's when I finally realized, he's taking my hand and he's leading me down that path. And it took a lot of years to learn that. But I'd start every day just praising God and asking for his guidance because I knew it was going to be a challenge for me to get through that work day. I could no longer just rely on my own abilities, and my prayer was his will be done in my life. I finally learned that. In Matthew, it says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself, and each day has enough trouble of its own. So that really became my motto, take it one day at a time. So I would tell God, not Gail, I'd tell God in the morning, I said, well, if you want me to drag myself into work today and put in, the hours that I can, I'll do it. But I'm also ready to move on. If you want me to go to somewhere else, which, I was about 50 years old, so middle age, so going to a different career at that time, I had no idea what it would be. So I felt like I was stepping out on a limb there, but if that's what God wanted me to do, I was finally ready to just follow his leading. And really going back to the early verses, I was finally willing to trust him in all things. So I went through from being a pocket Christian to being in a partnership with Jesus, and finally allowing Jesus to lead me down the path that he wanted me to go. So some of the things I've learned on this long walk as a follower of Christ is to talk to Jesus, to pray to him, and just as important to listen to what he might say. A lot of times that comes out of reading verses in the Bible or what somebody else might say to you. God has different ways of communicating to us. And importantly, to seek his will in all that I do, and to praise him and to trust him no matter what this throws my way, because I'm sure there's going to be more challenges in life. So every day in all my life, just give my trust to him. And I wish I didn't take 50 years to figure that out, but as we say, some of us are slow learners. So I'd just like to close in prayer this morning. Lord, I thank you for being with me on this long journey and the incredible patience you've had with me. I thank you for the lessons you've taught me in my life, and for the many times you've redirected me back on the path that you've set for me. I'm grateful that you brought Gail into my life to share this ride with me. And my prayer is for all of us to seek your will every day and find that path that you've set out for each of us. Amen.